Hello everybody, I'm Grandmaster Dennis Borosh, and today we're going to talk about Wesley So's fantastic US Championship run, 9 out of 11 points undefeated, only matched by Bobby Fischer himself. Now, this wouldn't have been possible if not for this crucial game that you're just seeing on your screen between Jeffrey Xiong and Wesley So. This is a crazy position, as you might notice, but let's come back to the beginning because it was a big fight. So Jeffrey Xiong was facing Wesley So with a black e4, c5, knight f3, knight c6. Sort of a surprise, as Jeffrey used to play the Najdorf some time ago. Already a psychological warfare is going on. d4 takes, e5, knight b5, d6, bishop g5, a6, knight a3, b5, threatening the good old style fork. And white has a choice here. You either play knight d5 or you go bishop takes f6. And interestingly enough, bishop takes f6, it did happen. G takes f6, knight d5 in Jeffrey's game, but when he was playing with white. After bishop d3, queen h5, castle, he played the rare a takes f5 variation against Swirch. So it's interesting that he decided to repeat the exact same variation versus Wesley So. But Wesley chooses the wise knight d5 variation, which is less tactical and more positional, where it is more about square control than tactical melees. Knight d5, just trying to put pressure on that queen. As it's already pinned, you can never take that pawn or knight because your queen would be in danger. Bishop e7, bishop f6, bishop f6, c3. Now, the Sveshnikov, a big favorite recently of World Championships, namely the Carlsen Caruana World Championship match. Here black has the compensation in the form of a bishop pair, however, does not have control over crucial squares such as d5, and knight c2 e3 often helps out to stabilize that square. So this will turn into a positional struggle. g5, knight c2, preparing this a4 move, but Jeffrey comes well prepared and plays a rook b8, making sure that nothing funky ever happens and a4 is not a possibility. a3, just overprotecting that square. Castle, h4. It's kind of a strange thing to see these moves played on the queen side, and then on the king side. However, this pawn is taboo. You can't capture it because after queen h5, you are going to get checkmated or you lose your bishop. Jeffrey is forced to play bishop h6, g4, trying to close on in and trap that bishop. But bishop f4 shows up, queen f3. And even though these moves seem nonsensical, it has been part of the opening debate. And in this case, actually it is Jeffrey who comes up with a novelty first. He plays bishop b7, although in correspondence games, where they have all the time and adjournments, they have a5 being played in that case and b4. And that has been the big topic for those grandmasters. But Jeffrey comes up with this interesting idea of a bishop b7, attacking and putting pressure on white's pieces and saying, you can take my pawn, but you will have to deal with some compensation for it. And here, Wesley plays g5. And I do not think g5 is the best move, but it's a good practical try, as it puts Jeffrey in a situation where he has to double take and take a look whether Wesley prepared this line or is he just bluffing. So this is the moment when Jeffrey really started thinking, as for him, a win is very important to try to catch up with Wesley. Rook e8, knight takes e4, ef. Actually a very good move, immediately eyeing that e pawn. Long castles, running away from anything dangerous. But here comes b4, which is a very nice move by Jeffrey Xiong, realizing it is time to conjure up some play on the queen side. A takes b4, knight takes b4, opening up the bishop, pressing down this pawn, and it seems that it's getting dangerous for Wesley. Knight takes b4, bishop e4, queen f4, and here Jeffrey makes a slight inaccuracy, takes on b4. Even though this looks very logical and there's a threat of taking on h1 later. It turns out queen a5 would have been the stronger move, setting up threats and then thinking about rook takes b4, because after bishop d3, bishop takes h1, can't capture because there's queen a1 check and the rook is falling. And instead you have to play f3, but then after bishop g2, this bishop is actually wriggling its way back to the game. So rook takes b4 is played, but here comes bishop d3, an astounding geometrical move. You cannot take on d3 because queen b4 and you're down an exchange and you're suffering. So here Jeffrey had to take on h1 because otherwise white can take on e4 and just clip the pawn on d6. Bishop h1, queen takes b4. Bishop f3, rook d2, d5. Now, mind you, the position is still roughly balanced. White has a bit of an advantage, but because of this king being a little bit iffy on c1, black always has compensation. However, Wesley realizes that the best thing that he can do now is to clip this pawn on a6 and play and position up a pawn. h6, g takes h6. Also notice that Wesley had more time, so in case of you might wonder, he is trying to put all the onus on Jeffrey, so he needs to find all the moves. Rook e4, queen c5. Making sure that that's a target. Rook takes h4, queen c8. A very good practical choice. He is in the lead at the moment when he's playing this game, so playing for two results, a win or a draw, would perfectly fit him. He takes, rook takes, bishop b7, just pinning this bishop and also targeting the d5 pawn. Rook h5, b4. And now the smoke has cleared. White definitely has a better advantage because this pawn is danger, and sometimes you always have to deal with c4 ideas. King f8, bringing in the king because it's an endgame, and that's exactly what Wesley does. He's going to walk up with his king and support this b pawn. Rook f5, king b3, king a4, b5. Just nursing that pawn. Rook f4, king a5, king d6, and b6. The closer, the better. Rook c4, rook d3. Notice how practical Wesley is. He's not giving up pawns. He makes sure everything's under control and then just tries to push that extra passer that he has. Rook c5 check, king b4, king b3, rook f4, c4. A very nice touch by Wesley, even though the position is roughly even objectively. Black was already in time trouble and has to find some accurate moves to survive. King c5, first move is an accurate one by Jeffrey. Takes, rook b4, trying to take here. And here, Jeffrey takes on b6. Actually, he had the alternative of going bishop g4 and bishop d7, but that runs into this glorious idea of bishop d5. Not only stopping any threats with rook b3, but after bishop d5, rook takes d5, takes d7, and there's no way you can stop this pawn from promoting. You give a rook c4 check, white would just play king b3, and you do not have access to these squares, and the next move is just going to be promotion. What is actually fascinating, even in bishop e4's case, there is this move d6, bishop d3, d7, check. You cannot really capture because then rook d4 and the pawn is falling. But if you go king b2, here there is this glorious move of bishop d5, which actually deserves a lot of exclamation marks, because after rook takes d5, b7 happens and you can't stop both of those pawns, which would lead into a position where white will queen. King c3, rook takes b6, probably still the best move, but mind you, already black has to be very accurate with very little time. d6, giving up the piece, but even if you capture, there's d7 and there's no stopping of the pawn. So Jeffrey goes rook takes b7, d7 takes, and probably in rush played f5, which was a decisive mistake. It turns out bishop d5 would have given ample chances to build a fortress. After king d3, bishop e6, g4. It is fairly difficult, if not near impossible, to break this one down, but with seconds on the clock, it's no wonder that Jeffrey falters with f5. But now, the practical and ever so good technical player Wesley plays king d3, just coming closer with the king, and with the king on c5 cut off, this will be an easy win. Bishop e4, g4, and in fact, Jeffrey wanted to build the same structure, however he forgot that after king f4, this rook is going to show up on f7, rook takes f5, and this is a one endgame. Here, Jeffrey resigned, understandably so, because after this pawn is falling, Jeffrey is just hopelessly lost. And that means that Wesley So wins the US Championship with the score 9 out of 11, matching Bobby Fischer's score. He also scored it undefeated. Impressive. We'll see how the future goes, but this is Wesley So's second title. So if you have any thoughts, wishes, and comments about this tournament or this game, do leave a comment below, and I see you next time. Bye bye.